America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone, network, and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you, it's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless, only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
Full steam ahead to what will be a long holiday weekend for some and the busiest few days of the year for most NBA teams. As before we get to the 4th, we have the first and free agency underway. Golic, a mad dash for cash as the rest of the basketball world tries to find a way to chase down Golden State.
This is always the fun thing at midnight, at 12:01, who gets contacted. And obviously those are the guys that get contacted are the ones that are going to get usually the most money. So it is that mad dash to create these super teams, as everybody wants to talk about. With Chris Paul going to Houston, what else can they get? Where's Gordon Hayward and Paul George going to end up? Again, some of these aren't free agent moves. They're going to be trades, but we all know moves that are potentially going to happen. Paul Millsap's name jumping into the fray as far as those big free agents, where he's going to go. Blake Griffin, those two visiting the Phoenix Suns, a team that, threw the season last year to try and get better. So this is the part when you talk about the offseason being better than the regular season. Nobody talked about the Phoenix Suns in the regular season until we talked about them tanking. So now, their fans can be excited. We're talking about them possibly going out and getting some high-priced free agents.
Yeah, the regular season is about losing, and the offseason is about trying to win. And I think there's something that is just intrinsically pleasing about that for sports fans everywhere. Even people who couldn't care less about the Phoenix Suns, I think if you're a basketball fan, you'd much rather be reading about the Phoenix Suns trying to find a way to sign. Could they put together Millsap and Blake Griffin with Josh Jackson they just drafted? Right. And boom, like in the blink of an eye, you go from, and again, they were making themselves the worst team in basketball. They didn't necessarily have to be otherwise. But you go from being one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in basketball to a team that, while they may not challenge for a championship, and that team wouldn't, I'd like to go watch them. If they're coming into my city on a Tuesday night, hey, I'll buy a ticket. I want to go see that. I mean, to me, that's all good. I don't mean to keep rehashing an argument I continue to have over and over and over again, and I continue to lose just because no one agrees with me.
Right.
But if forgetting everything else, if you are a basketball season ticket holder, let's just say you're in New York. That's where we're close to, and that's where I live. So you've got your Knicks season tickets. So you're going to get every team in the NBA coming through. How many of them are you excited to see? How many times do you say to yourself, wow, I'm really looking forward?
Yeah.
Not that they can win a championship, but this is a game I'm looking forward to going to watch.
Because you're certainly not excited to see your Knicks. So, you got to
right
look at the
now.
other team. No, I mean, that's one of the other teams, unfortunately. You wait to see, what bad can they do. But who's going to jump in? Are the Celtics going to do what a lot of people think they're going to do? Are the Heat going to jump into this thing? That's the beauty of this right now. And again, the maxes are maxes. The amount of money that you can give to a player, whether he's staying with his home team to make more going somewhere else. Those guys, it's just going to come down to, A, if they want to leave their team to get less money somewhere else, depending on what they get offered, and then B, where do they want to go? Then it comes down to what's your personal preference as a free agent.
Well, you and I sat together in the makeup room before we came in here, and we watched a really good exercise by Tom Penn.
Oh, my gosh.
Our basketball, cap insider, front office insider with Kenny Mayne on the Overnight Sports Center, in which he did a magnificent job breaking down all the different permutations of what could happen. And clearly, if the entire exercise we're in the midst of here is to ask the question, can a team be created that you would all of a sudden say there's a legit championship contender? If our belief right now is that there are really only 2 championship contenders, let's put Cleveland in it, even if we don't think they really could beat Golden State, and they didn't. Let's say for the sake of this discussion there are 2. The way he put it together, there is a scenario in which Boston could clearly become a third. If there's a very real path for Danny Ainge and the Celtics to adding Hayward and George.
Right.
If that happens, then the Celtics are a legitimate candidate to win an NBA championship. Agree?
I think I agree. Legitimate? Legitimate, yeah.
They're right there.
It depends on your definition of legitimate. Would I favor them in any game? No. But
let's start with this. Could that team beat Cleveland as currently constituted? If Cleveland doesn't add Dwayne Wade if he gets bought out, or Carmelo Anthony if he gets bought out.
They basically stay the same.
If I mean, as currently constituted,
adding
that's
Paul
a pretty
George
good
and
group.
Hayward, with that group, they absolutely. Now we have to see who they have to give up to get them, but,
right?
Because there is about the starting group, and one of the reasons I think Golden State is so good. We keep talking about the 4 stars on that team, but they have some incredible ancillary players as well, of which one they may lose. And Andre Iguodala, we'll have to wait and see about that. Yes, they would have a much better chance than this past year to win the championship. I certainly wouldn't favor them, but maybe it would certainly be a better series. And could they potentially beat Cleveland? Yes.
The thing about Boston is they have so many tradable assets, including draft picks.
Well, that's the thing
people want.
Because Celtic fans are living for the now. So they would rather see you give up those draft picks, keep this team together. If you're going to get a Hayward and get a Paul George, they'd be like, okay, let's win now. Hey, we were number 1 seeds last year. I know it didn't seem like a number 1 seed, and we didn't really pressure the Cavaliers at all, but we get those 2 guys. Let's not give up the rest of our team. Let's give up some of those draft picks, of which Danny Ainge correctly said you can never have enough draft picks because they're all assets and can be used. And that's what fans will want. Team has to think more, as well as not only the present but the future as well, and what those draft picks could be by them scouting already what the next couple of drafts are potentially going to look like. But fans are going to want it now. We get these 2 players. Let's win right now. Give up those draft picks. Let's keep some of our players. And here's the other thing. If you're going to bring in high-priced players, and Tom Penn was doing it on the board, his work of the board was magical, about the luxury tax you're going to have to pay, I'd throw that one out the window. You're going to pay it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
If you're going to lock in some big-name guys, I know you have to look at that number, but you better look at it kind of quickly and just know that you're going to write a monster luxury tax check if you want to get that type of team that's going to compete for a championship.
Well, I'll tell you, Van Gundy actually said exactly that. He was on with us yesterday when your son was here with me, and he said exactly that there's going to be a separation in the NBA that is going to be very clear between owners who are willing to pay that and owners who are not.
That's right.
And if you have owners who are not, they're going to have a much harder time. They're going to have to genuinely just strike gold.
Right, exactly.
In the draft. I look at a team like Philadelphia. They're not going to pay a luxury tax because their stars are Embiid, Kidd, and Markelle Fultz. Look in Minnesota, Jimmy Butler's getting paid big money, but not colossal money.
Right, and nobody else.
And the rest of the stars are young kids, so they're not paying. Now, can they become a legitimate championship contender in that window? That remains to be seen. All right, let's get into this here. Let's go off the top, heading into the final day of the month, Mike. And I like this stat.
Yeah.
There have been 1,068 home runs hit in the month of June. This could set a record.
Oh, that would mean there would have to be no home runs hit tonight to not even tie the record, and it's not going to happen. They're behind the record by 1. It'll get broken. Some stats on home runs this month. There have been 34 leadoff home runs this month.
I think the Cubs had all of them.
Yeah, how about it?
Didn't they?
Yeah, Rizzo. 3 more than any other calendar month in baseball history. There's been at least 1 player with multiple home run games in all but 1 day this month. June 27th is the only day somebody hasn't had multiple home runs. It's really been incredible what's gone on. There's going to, right now, the record for home runs in a season at 5,693. The pace this year is over 6,100. That's the pace. There's been an average of 2.53 home runs hit per game this season. The record is 2.3. 42% of all runs scored this season have come from home runs. That's the highest percentage in Major League history.
So there's the statistic.
Right.
And if we want to get into this, and I don't know how interested fans are in it or not, but you say to yourself, wait a minute, the steroid era ended. Why are we hitting home runs at this rate? Well, there's your number right there, 42%. Just think about that. Almost 1 out of every 2 runs that are scored in a baseball game come by a home run because everyone is swinging for the fences on every single at bat. And that's why they either hit a home run or they strike out. And candidly, that's the problem with baseball now.
Right.
You want more home runs without that statistic. And that's not really easy to find. You know, your son was making an interesting point that his childhood, his youth, was at the heart of the McGuire-Sosa era.
Right.
So he sort of grew up at a time when in baseball, that's what happens. People hit home runs like crazy. but you didn't have this volume of strikeouts and all that, so the rest of it didn't feel kind of boring and empty. So it's a little bit of good news, a little bit of bad news, I think, if you're a baseball fan. Here's some terrible news. The Nationals blew a ninth-inning lead to the Cubs Thursday. Their bullpen blowing a lead is not really news.
No.
But what happened to Trey Turner definitely is.
Yeah, Trey Turner got hit by a pitch, busted his wrist, and is going to miss some serious time. Trey Turner has, I think, 3,237 stolen bases this year.
Look at that.
It's just, that. Oof, right on the wrist.
We're just watching the highlight right there. That catches him right in that bone where the wrist is.
Yeah.
That is an ugly-looking play.
What do they miss? He's the only player in the majors to rank in the top 10 in hits, runs, stolen bases since last year's All-Star break. So as far as the bullpen, you're right. They've now have Major League high 6 losses this season when entering the ninth inning with a lead.
Off the top.
Another loss, and this is just an unimaginably sad story if you look at it this way. The day that you get called up to the major leagues, obviously it's not a day I've ever experienced, nor did you. You played football.
That first game, you get to play that first game.
Phone call, you're going to the show.
Yeah.
Dustin Fowler, Yankee prospect, gets called up. He jumps on a quick flight, races to Chicago as fast as he can. He's playing right field last night because Aaron Judge is DHing. And in the first inning, the bottom of the first inning of his first major league game, he hasn't even come to the plate. Mike, for those who didn't see it, tell everybody what happened.
Well, he ruptured his patellar tendon in his right knee. He went full bore for a foul ball right by the stands and slammed his knee into the wall. But there's a little electrical box that Joe Girardi was talking about that his knee went into, and he ruptured his patella. And the telltale sign, he tried to walk it off, which is what most guys, a lot of guys would try and do. But the telltale sign of that rupture is you can't straighten your leg. It's that tendon that connects the tibia below your knee to your quadriceps, your big muscle, the quadriceps above the knee, and that thing ruptured, so you can't use your quad to straighten your leg out. There's the full tear, there's a partial tear, and then there's that jumper's knee, that tendonitis. But this, a tear, he's going to have surgery, I believe, tonight. 6 to 12 months recovery time for a young kid who is a fast runner as well. So what effect will this have on the rest of his career? He's young. You hope he can heal well from it, but very, very tough injury to have at any age, let alone right when you're trying to make your move in the bigs.
First inning of his major league debut, he was due to have his first at-bat to lead off the second. Terrible.
Yep.
Booger McFarland actually had his career ended by this exact injury. He gave us a little prognosis/diagnosis. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. NBA free agency, as we were discussing, Mike, begins 12:01 a.m. Eastern time here on July 1st, and there are huge names out there to be had.
So you can't sign until July 7th. From the 1st through the 6th, the moratorium period, you can talk about deals.
Yeah, we've seen how that's worked out.
You can agree to deals and that whole thing. One difference this year, restricted free agents can now sign offer sheets during this moratorium time. But, yeah, you'll see it, at midnight, 12:01, guys are already going to be getting called. Visits are going to be set up. This is setting up potentially to be a very interesting offseason on what team is going to get the most. And there's still the big questions out there, one of them being Carmelo Anthony. Will he ever get bought out? What's going to happen there? Who does he end up with? But this has been a very intriguing offseason, which is going to get a whole lot more interesting at midnight.
And the person making the decision for the Knicks, as far as all this is concerned, currently is Steve Mills. But could his the replacement for Phil Jackson, I guess, be David Griffin, deposed in Cleveland, Mike, but now our reporting suggests he's emerged as a candidate in New York?
Well, that was one of the first people you thought of. He was denied permission to talk to Orlando, so he was in Cleveland. He missed out on 3 potential GM jobs, while he was dealing with the end of his tenure in Cleveland, not allowed to talk to anybody else. I know everybody was talking about Masai Ujiri, the GM from Toronto, but you're talking about the possibility of draft picks involved there, so the Knicks seemingly don't want to get involved. Then the word about John Calipari, that his people supposedly contacted the Knicks for him to be the president and the head coach, which he's denying. And, oh, by the way, we'll have him on at 8:05 Eastern this morning. I believe he's in Egypt right now.
He is.
So the Knicks continue to be just a scratch your head type of story right now.
We will continue as we go. That's a very busy off the top. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot, see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. And if all that isn't good enough, don't forget that tomorrow night, exclusively on ESPN and on ESPN Deportes, it's the Battle of Brisbane. Manny Pacquiao defending his WBO welterweight title live, aiming for his 60th career win, taking on Australian Australia's undefeated #1 world-rated contender, Jeff Horn. The Battle of Brisbane, I almost did it again.
There you go.
The Battle of Brisbane, not the Brattle of Brisbane.
No.
But the Battle of Brisbane, presented by Straight Talk Wireless, tomorrow night, July 1st, 10 Eastern, exclusively on ESPN, ESPN Deportes, and the ESPN app. And Mike, when your son was with me yesterday, we had Teddy Atlas on from Australia, and the enthusiasm in his voice. For the people who love the sport, this is genuinely an exciting opportunity. You may have seen that we announced that there were going to be 2 more big-time championship fights coming up on ESPN in August. And Joe Tessitore will be with us in the next hour. He's in Australia to call the fight, and he's our lead play-by-play guy for boxing. And he and I were talking about it a little bit as well. This is a great opportunity for big-time fights on what now is sort of considered free over-the-air TV. Granted, ESPN is cable.
Well, listen, you're still paying you're not doing anything more than paying your cable bill if you have ESPN. You're not doing pay-per-view. You don't have to hit that extra button and pay that extra money outside of your normal cable bill, which you're paying now anyway. So, yes, a lot more eyes can be on it. And that's where boxing is right now. Boxing needs to go back to get the exposure, get more eyes on it to try and get and rise up again, because we've talked about it a ton, where boxing was, where horse racing was, and where they both are right now.
Yeah, and Teddy brought it up. He used a good expression for it yesterday. He said boxing has turned into sort of like a Super Bowl kind of thing, where once a year you get one really big fight, and everyone's excited. All the movie stars want to be there and everything else. But then the rest of the year, it basically disappears from view for everyone except for those who are really hardcore, passionate fans of the sport. And the only way you develop others who are casual fans of the sport is to give it to them in a way they don't have to work for.
They got to see it. That's exactly right. They can just flip to a station. They know a station to get to. They know what the numbers are to get to that station, and they get to see a fight.
So self-serving, perhaps, because it's here at ESPN. But regardless of where it was, I'm excited for this because you and I are old enough to remember a time when boxing was on regular TV, and that's how you fell in love with it, and I fell in love with it, watching Ernie Shavers and Larry Holmes and Ken Norton and guys like that fighting in the 70s, and then Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns and guys like that in the 80s. And we don't have guys like that now. There were great fighters right now, but no one knows who they are. Those guys were megastars in that era.
Absolute megastars. So, and again, the monster fights will still be on pay-per-view, but more casual eyes will be able to see boxing and maybe grow to, grab on to some of these boxers and who they are and what they represent, and then follow them even if it were to pay-per-view.
All right, so Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Great guest. We mentioned Joe Tess will be with us from Australia off the top of the next hour on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We'll see how its long-distance function works. John Calipari, Stephen A. Daryl Morey, GM of the Rockets, also coming up this morning. So let's let you comment on the Chris Paul stuff. You weren't here yesterday as we talked about it all morning long. Chris Paul and James Harden, it's an interesting dynamic.
It is.
In that backcourt with, it's 2 guys and 1 basketball.
Well, I mean,
how does that work?
You had 2 guys and 1 basketball when Harden, even though coming off the bench in Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook, so you had 2 guys that liked the back, and we saw, that. You go back and see how that relationship was, and we know what D'Antoni had talked about with Harden. He wants him to double his assists, and Harden led the league in assists, led the league in turnovers as well. So I guess you're talking about a sharing situation, or Chris Paul. Really, you think of Chris Paul as the man with the ball in his hand, and we'll see how Harden adapts back to 1 year of, okay, I want you to handle the ball. I want you to double your assists. I want you to be the man with the ball, to, okay, now I want you to be the off guard. We know you'll shoot. There's no doubt about that. But, let's see how it works. I thought he did a great job moving the ball around. A lot of turnovers, but sort of Russell Westbrook just won the MVP and was second in the league. Was only about, 20 or 30 turnovers. They were in the 460s and the 430s as far as turnovers were concerned. So it's not like Westbrook was a clean player as well, and he was your MVP, and Harden was a runner-up. So they both were getting the job done. When you handle the ball that much, you get turnovers. So I guess that's the thought process. He doesn't now have to handle it as much, and it's also in the hands now of a future Hall of Famer and Chris Paul. So let's build something here. The impressive part to me with Moraine hearing the sound was that he remembered who the other guys on the team were, because they traded everybody away.
Right.
I mean, so that's going to be the end. You have to have a team around these 2 guys. At some point, these are 2 guards, so you got to have a team around them. So let's see where else they go. As constituted right now, Can you say they're better than last year? Well, sure, when you had a guy like Chris Paul. As constituted now, do you say they're the second-best team in the conference now? No, I'm still giving that to San Antonio. I'll still wait to see what else they're going to do. And I still think it would have been more intriguing had Chris Paul gone to San Antonio, given the fact in playing with Kawhi Leonard of where that may have gone. Because Kawhi Leonard and Chris Paul don't play the same position, much like Harden and Chris Paul do.
How intriguing would you feel it was if they now add Paul George?
Well, then Paul George certainly is an X factor because of the defensive side that he can play, because everything is measured against Golden State. We know he can score offensively. Defensively, that's where you're going to pick up some that added bonus when you're playing a team like Golden State. So, and I know they're going to try and do that. I know they're not satisfied with where they are right now. It was a start for them, so that would obviously be a monster pickup.
Is there a way that this winds up helping Harden as well? I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on the analytics, but just put it this way. Only 10% of Harden's three-point attempts last year, and he shot 1,000,000 threes because that's all they shoot in Houston is threes.
Right.
Only 10% of his shots qualified as wide open threes. That's the lowest percentage of wide open threes of anybody who took 100 threes last year. So you have to believe with Chris Paul on the floor with him, James Harden's going to get more open looks. So that has to help.
More open looks, but less shots than he had. So that's what we see. Listen, he's done this before. Again, when he was in Oklahoma City, this position before. So it's not like it's foreign to him, not like he can't do it. But again, it's coming off of a year where the coach really emphasized him with the ball, him, getting everybody else involved, and now going back, to the other position as Chris Paul takes over.
All right, we have great insight into what's going on now with the Knicks and their front office, into what may still be going on with Kristaps Porzingis, into the futures of Paul George, Gordon Hayward, Carmelo Anthony, and others. All that is to come. But up next, a truly terrible night for one young player, genuinely tough to watch, and wait until you hear the reaction of his manager.
Greeny, you know how to win at business?
Tell me how.
Show up early for meetings. That way everybody who's only on time looks like slackers.
Well, I got a better way to win at business.
What's that?
Instant free nights at La Quinta Inns and Suites. You can show up with no advance reservation and redeem your La Quinta Returns loyalty points for a free night that same night just by using the La Quinta app.
I feel like I'd win at business more than you.
I'd cream you at business.
Impossible. I'm undefeated at business.
Go to LQ.com now and prepare to win at business. So there is one of the most famous baseball people of all time, immortalized, of course, in fiction and film, Moonlight Graham. June 29th, 1905, was the night that Moonlight Graham wouldn't have been at night because they wouldn't have had lights in the stadium. It would have been in the day. But June 29th, 1905, was the day that Moonlight Graham played but did not bat in his major league debut. So, June 29th, 2017, 112 years later, we had the story last night of Dustin Fowler. And listen, I sincerely hope that Fowler will rehab this injury and he'll come back better than ever next year, and there's certainly every reason to think that he may. But boy, was this an awful thing to see. I don't like to use the word tragedy in the sports context because nobody died, and it isn't a tragedy. But you know what? This is a 22-year-old kid who has worked at baseball for the entirety of his life, has the moment of his life. He got the call up so quickly that his family wasn't able to make it to Chicago in time to see him. So they were wherever the Yankees are going tonight. That's where his family is going, Houston. So his family was meeting him in Houston so they could watch their son play in the big leagues, because it was the last game last night of their series at U.S. Cellular Field, or whatever they call it now, on the south side of Chicago. And in the first inning, he is scheduled to lead off the second. In the first inning, playing right field, he runs into the right field fence, the one bordering on the right side on the foul line there, and he bangs into an electrical box. And, Mike, just give me, again, 30 seconds on what he did to his knee.
Well, the patella tendon that runs, connects the tibia, the lower leg, runs up through the knee and then connects the quadriceps. He ruptured it. He tore it. So the telltale sign of a torn, complete tear there is you can't straighten your leg. And you saw he tried to walk on it and he couldn't. He couldn't straighten his leg because you can't fire your quad to straighten your leg. That's one of the signs. At that point, you kind of hope, is it a partial tear? But certainly from the looks of that, not at all, because there's the rupture, the full tear, there's a partial tear, and then there's tendonitis, which some people know as jumper's knee, a real painful in the front of your knee from jumping and activity and not enough rest. That's painful. Imagine this, rupturing that. I mean, that's major surgery. That's immobile for, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. That's a 6-month at least rehab stint you're going to have. you start looking at the glass half full, which I know is almost impossible to do. We talk about our own Booger McFarland had this, and it ended his career. He was 31 years old. How old is
22?
Fowler?
He's 22.
So you have youth on your side, which hopefully will be a benefit as much as it possibly can about coming back from this and rehabbing and such, and see where he can go. He's a guy that uses his wheels, obviously, the way he plays the game, and that's what got him into this. I mean, he was sprinting for that ball. I mean, imagine, it's your first game. I mean, you want to imagine a guy going hard for a ball all the time.
First inning of his major league debut.
First game, you got to be so hopped up, and he is flying for that ball. And then when it's going, foul, he can't slow down enough before he rams his knee into the wall, into the electrical box. So that is tough. And I mean, I don't know if he heard a pop with it. A lot of times you'll hear that if he was just wanting to try and say, okay, no, it's not bad, I'm going to try and walk it off. I mean, that's kind of, you either know and you hit the ground and you grab it, or you're like, okay, man, I hope it's not as bad as I think, and you try and walk it off, and you just saw he could put no pressure on it at all. So surgery, and then you immobilize, and you start the rehab, and you hope the kid can come back.
For what it's worth, it's the same injury Victor Cruz had, and he was never the same again. Booger McFarland, again, he was a 31-year-old football player. This is a 22-year-old baseball player, so it doesn't have to be exactly the same. But Booger texted us the following, quote, Fowler won't walk for 2 to 2.5 months. Booger said it took himself 9 months before it really felt good again. Booger then just texted, he's listening to the conversation, when mine popped, it looked like someone stole my kneecap. That's Booger's description. Again, all people are different, all injuries are different.
Sure.
No, this is not an exact diagnosis, but it is someone that...
But it is one of those injuries that you'll know it when the medical staff is out there and moving around the kneecap, and it's moving in ways that it shouldn't even think about moving and going sideways and such, and you know what's going on, and you could see the reaction. You could see Joe Girardi out there. I mean, you kind of knew what was happening.
Here was Girardi after the game.
When something that big happens like that, are you just in disbelief the way it unfolds?
I was in tears, actually, because I know what it takes to get here and how hard he's worked, and what's supposed to be a really exciting day for him turns into a really bad day. So I'm still in disbelief. I'm in tears for the kid. I know he'll fight and get back here, but I mean he's out for a while, and he has to go through a long, grueling rehab, and it just doesn't seem fair that that's what happened.
Yeah, it is a long, grueling rehab. This is all about everything taking in that surgery and healing up. That's why a lot of times, depending on the surgery and the injury you see today, they want to get that moving as quickly as possible and start the rehab. This you're going to have to be immobile. This they're going to, I would imagine, cast it up. He can't move that thing. He's got to let everything set and start to heal in there before he can start the rehab. So for a 22-year-old with a ton of energy and ready to go, I mean, it's going to be an awful, awful lot of downtime and patience and blood, sweat, and tears all alone that he's going to be going through.
Aaron Judge was DHing last night, which is why the kid was in right. Aaron Judge says, I didn't see the play, nor do I want to see it. Makes you sick. About to debut, about to lead off the next inning, and something like that happens. I was sick to my stomach. Brett Gardner said, it's one of the worst things I've seen on a baseball field. I can't imagine a worse scenario for him. It's heartbreaking. He's a good kid and a really, really good player with a bright future. Again, he was scheduled to lead off the top of the second inning.
Again, it's tough. This is a situation you see guys, draft picks, Dante Fowler. What did he go, number 2 or 3 to Jacksonville a couple of years ago? He's in OTAs or not even in pads, and he blows his knee out, and he misses a year. I mean, unfortunately, you see this stuff happen over and over again to young guys, old guys, but we're talking about a young guy here just starting his career. Then all of a sudden you're on the shelf having to make a comeback right off the bat.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo! Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
I mean, I'm hesitant to even go here, but when we were getting into a debate over whether free agency starts at 12:00 o'clock or 12:01 o'clock, Christopher Bird tweets, military time goes from 01 to 2400. Hence, the first minute of the day is 12:01 a.m. or 001 hours.
0001.
0001. I don't know if that's the way they would say it, though. I don't know. I wasn't in the military. So if you're in the military and you were describing 12:01 a.m., would you say 0001? Would you say 001? Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it. I understand. My point is, I blame Stanzik again. There was no reason for us to get into this.
I blame Stanzik for a lot of things. And these two things this morning, yes, I blame him as well. I definitely blame. There couldn't be two less conversations I want to get into.
Okay.
And whether it's midnight or 12:01 or there's a 100% chance of rain, does it really mean 100% chance?
Let me get to this one.
Okay.
Tom Looney, regarding Fowler, do the Yankees take care of the injury and rehab financially, or is he responsible personally?
No. When you're hurt, the team takes care of that. That's all the team. They'll rehab with the facility, the whole deal. There'll be sometimes you see a player gets hurt and there'll be an injury settlement. They can waive. I'm talking like in football, they'll waive a player, but there'll be an injury settlement, and then they go rehab it where they want. But it's worked out. In this case, no, he will. It's all the Yankees take care of everything. The teams take care of everything.
And all of your Twitter reaction comes through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Nothing makes a summer birthday or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. And right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. All right, so there are a lot of NBA wheelings and dealings getting set to take place at midnight or 12:01, however you want to look at it. One of the big questions, I guess, is, well, it really wasn't a question in my mind, is Kristaps Porzingis still potentially going to get traded? When Phil Jackson left the Knicks, I think the whole world looked at it and assumed two things. One of them is a question. How does this impact the Carmelo stuff? And two, obviously, Kristaps Porzingis isn't getting traded. The minute Phil left, that's what we thought. And then, if you were watching ESPN last night, you heard Brian Windhorst say this.
Phil Jackson is gone. Yeah. Everybody in New York is celebrating. But I have yet to hear from anybody that Kristaps Porzingis is off the market. I think the assumption was that Phil was angry at Porzingis for skipping the exit meeting and some other stuff, and that he wanted him traded, and that Porzingis was no longer available. That, he wins. Porzingis wins the stare down. Okay. I have not heard that is true. I'm telling you, yesterday I wanted to find out. Porzingis is off the market, right? And I kept listening for he's off the market, and I didn't hear that. And so that makes me wonder what's going on right now.
Listen, Windy is about as tied in as anybody can be. I don't think there's any way he's getting traded. I would put that at 0%. I would say 100% chance.
It can't be 0 or 100. Don't do this to me. This is your fault now. You can't blame Stanzik. There's definitely not a 100% chance.
There is a 99.999% chance, in my opinion, he does not get traded.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I know how much you like him. What would you have to be offered? Let's say you're Steve Mills. See, I can't believe if they're really going to hire someone above Steve Mills that they would make this kind of move now, because it's such a significant
move. What are
you
doing then? If you take a 7'3", 21-year-old who plays the way the game is played today in the NBA, who's on the rise, what do you mean? Who am I taking?
What would you take?
LeBron?
Back in the trade?
I mean, seriously.
How about a bunch of picks? I mean, you're a team that needs to build, right? You
got a bunch of picks, but you have a guy who you can build around. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say he's untradeable, because we know there are very, very few of those. But to me, in every situation is different. Where the Knicks are, they are in flux. They don't know what's going on with Carmelo. He may be there, but he's not going to be there much longer. This team has to transition over to something else. What is that something else going to be? There's Hornacek even going to be there, after another year.
I'll take the under
after
on
another
that.
year. I agree. So you have to look at what you have. Do you just say, let's blow it all up, including a 7'3", 21-year-old who plays away from the basket? We haven't seen a shot like that since Dirk came in the league 20 years ago, of where we are in the NBA, to not build around that? I mean, where are you going? So you give up on him. What's the plan? I mean, get a bunch of draft picks and then hope they all turn out? Here's one already that went fourth. If you did the draft again, it would be number 2 easily behind Karl Anthony Towns. You're going to, and how many times do we talk about that? Well, you're trading number 1. Well, is that potential number 1 better than the guy they have on their team right now? Okay, let's say that. And he's 7'3", and he can play away from the basket, and he's getting better and better. So I don't know why you would do that. And he's not costing you a whole lot of money right now.
Mm-hmm. And he seems to want to be there. I'll say this. I wouldn't either. I'm not telling you that I would. But I don't think it's as totally crazy as it could
Then tell
sound.
me the thought process. Tell me, okay, we're going to trade Kristaps
There's
Porzingis.
only one
Here's
thought
the reason.
process. You don't think he's that good.
Okay.
You know?
All right.
Like everything that we're seeing about him, everything that we have decided about him, we've decided based upon his size,
right.
which is incredible,
right.
and based upon his athleticism and skill set at that size, which does look, I mean, it's blind, it's mesmerizing.
Yes.
You see little flashes, people call him the unicorn, you see little flashes where you're like, oh yeah, okay, this guy could be the greatest. I've never seen anything quite like this, but he's been hurt a lot for a young guy. He's got the kind of body that tends to get hurt a lot. 7'3" and gangly is sort of a dangerous. That always makes me worried about the feet.
I'm with you. If you don't want to take a
and
chance
does he
on
have
that,
toughness
okay.
and defense? That was just people who were there with him every single day.
Then it's the
may have a
European
different
thought process.
Well,
now.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying there may be some people inside who think that. If Phil Jackson is gone and this conversation is still going on,
then some people think that in there.
Then there's someone in there who thinks that. That's
Can't
the
be
only
Dolan
way
because
it
he's
could
at a
happen.
concert somewhere.
He's otherwise occupied.
Yeah.
Don't miss Joe Tess and more as we continue next. Mike and Mike.
Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
Well, I got bad news for you. Patrick Nuzzo, who does our Twitter, comes over to us during the break and says, I'm sorry, Golic, but every tweet is about that right now.
Yeah, I get it. The old 100% chance of rain. Greeny says it's impossible. It can't be 100% chance of rain.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah,
it can be 100% chance of rain, but then it has to rain.
It can rain somewhere in the area.
No, I mean, somewhere on the planet. That doesn't work for me.
Oh, somewhere in the area. 100% chance of rain means 100%.
How are you defining the area? Like right now we're in Bristol, Connecticut. If it rains in Dover, Delaware, that's not the area.
Well, I mean, it's...
Okay? If it rains in Middletown, Connecticut, I'll accept that. If we're in Bristol, Connecticut, and you tell me it rains in New York City, that's 100 miles away, that doesn't count for me. You got to draw a circle around the area at some point. This is just not okay.
Paul tweets, there's a 100% chance Greeny's an idiot.
See? That's a perfect usage of the percentage. There is zero chance otherwise. I sit here and I prove it day after day after day. You have 4 hours of daily evidence of the truth of that statement. This isn't that complicated. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Now, we've got the Shell Pennzoil Performance line here, right? We're really going to put it to the test. How many miles are we putting on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line?
This could be the most.
In this hour.
Could be the most.
Because we're about to have Joe Tessitore on. He's in Australia. And then we're going to have John Calipari on, and he's in Egypt. So those two places are both very far away from where we are and very far away from each other. So let's just see how our long distance works. But we'll have Joe Tess from the site of the fight, the Battle of Brisbane, and then we'll have John Calipari as he is coaching the under-19 team in the World Games, and then we'll talk to him about these rumors with the Knicks and everything else. When he was first offered up to us, it was before the Knick rumor came up.
Right.
And I really wanted to talk to him about the one-and-done stuff because he's now on board. Now, look, no one has succeeded better with one-and-dones than Calipari. And he's
ready to
on
give
board.
it up.
Look, it just no one can think it's good. No one except the NBA. For the NBA, it's perfect. You got these tailor-made stars. Everyone in America, every basketball fan in America knew all 7 of those kids who went 1 through 7 in the NBA draft. Now, how many of them? They were all ones and dones. How many of them, how many of those 7 guys would have gone right from high school if they could have?
Yeah, see, that I don't know.
Maybe all of them. I mean, they probably all would have. And the point is, how many people would have ever heard of any of them? And the answer is almost no one. Almost no one is following these high school, kids. Like the one high school kid you heard of was LeBron. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. His games were on ESPN2. But that was it. Most people aren't following high school basketball.
No, they're not.
It works perfectly for the NBA. They got tailor-made stars walking in the door.
Right.
So that is working for them. So they have much less impetus to change it than anyone else does, and they're the only ones who can change it, right?
Yes.
So Calipari can want change, and Coach K very eloquently talked about that on our show a few weeks ago. But, Mike, do you think it will change?
I don't know. I mean, I think it should change, but I don't know if it will. I kind of do like that you can go, the best way would be go whenever you want. You're You're a person that somebody's coming after you. I mean, just think about it in regular school. I mean, I know like doctors have to go to extra lawyers and all that, but I mean, if somebody came to you and you were a junior in college and said, we think you're doing well enough in your studies, we want to hire you right now, they can, right? I mean, there's nothing stopping them.
There's nothing stopping basically anyone in the entire country except for varsity basketball and football players. Yeah. Those are pretty much the only people who face those restrictions. All right, so we'll get to that with Calipari coming up. But right now, again, dialing up very long distance. We're going to Brisbane, Australia, where tomorrow night it is the Battle of Brisbane, big-time boxing, coming back to ESPN with Joe Tessitore and Teddy Atlas and a crew of thousands who are over there to cover the fight. Manny Pacquiao and Jeff Horn, and our friend Joe Tess joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Good morning, Joe, or whatever time it is there. How are you?
I'm still not used to it. I've been here all week, Greeny. Golic, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's dinner time there, right? Is it that area?
It's 9:00 at night on Friday night. So, I mean, listen, we're not hugging koalas and hand-feeding kangaroos. We're just trying to get used to the time change. Trust me.
Wow. That's yeah. Okay.
Joe Tess and I, how different is this? Joe Tess and I spent almost 2 weeks together in Malibu at the beginning of the month shooting Battle of the Network Stars, which I hope some of you got a chance to watch last night on ABC. And then, boom, he's off from L.A. out to Australia for this really exciting opportunity. So Joe and I had a lot of time to sit and talk about this and other things when your love for boxing. Joe, just quickly, and we had your friend Teddy Atlas on yesterday talking very eloquently about it, about what this can mean for the sport of boxing to have a star the magnitude of Manny Pacquiao on ESPN as opposed to on a pay-per-view fight or a pay-per-view package, and what you think this might potentially lead to for the sport of boxing.
Well, I mean, listen, he's been tucked away in the pay-per-view closet, as has every major star of the sport for his entire career. So this is the first time you see Pacquiao on a Saturday night where you're not paying $60, $70, $80 to watch the guy fight going back to 2005. This whole narrative that's been spinning for about a generation that boxing's a dying sport, boxing's dead, who pays attention? It's not mainstream the way it used to be. Remember when everybody knew every great champion? Boxing is not dead when it comes to making money, and that's why the guys were fighting on pay-per-view. However, Bob Arum of Top Rank, the promoter, and spent a good amount of time with him this week down here, sort of saw where the sport was in terms of what needs to happen now. And he made this decision that he's going to take one of his top properties, and Pacquiao was all in as well, and fight on ESPN and give something to the fans. And that's what's going to happen here in a fight that's about as close to a real-life Rocky script as you're going to see with this guy, Jeff Horn, who is undefeated. All the locals down here believe, and now there's 60,000 of them coming out to their grand rugby stadium to see if he can pull off this upset against a guy who, until you come halfway across the world, you probably don't realize is an absolute global superstar in Pacquiao.
How long, I'm trying to phrase this the right way, how long and often does boxing now need to do this to try and build back up, to let the casual eyes see them? We know the biggest fights are still going to go to pay-per-view, but does this need to become a thing for a while to get those casual eyes on the boxers?
Actually, we just got news within the course of the last 12 hours here that it appears that the business of boxing is changing drastically, because our network has just announced that on August 5th, they're going into more business with Top Rank. And guys, just so you know, Bob Arum and Top Rank, I would consider them, when it comes to boxing promotion and their stable of fighters, they would be the NFL of the sport. They are the top-tier property within the sport. On August 5th, Vasyl Lomachenko, who is one of the pound-for-pound elites, a rising superstar in the sport, is also fighting on ESPN. That's a guy that would have been on premium cable and has in recent years as he's made his run up as a 130-pound champion. And Terrence Crawford, who's a 140-pound champion, now on August 19th, it was just announced, is going to be fighting as well on ESPN on a Saturday night. It's another guy that's been over at HBO and in the world of pay-per-view, an absolute rising star who's a champion at 140, and he's going to fight against Julius Ndongo for the other two belts to try to unify that division. So it's changing right in front of our eyes, and it's good for the fans. It's really good for the fighters.
Mike and Joe Tessitore is with us. So what is Manny Pacquiao now? The last time a lot of people in this country saw him was in the Floyd Mayweather fight. He's fought several times since and is a champion. What do we expect from him? What is he right now?
You expect a knockout, and you expect it to happen in spectacular fashion, and that's not because Jeff Horn isn't somebody who's good enough or he's just going to roll over a completely overmatched opponent. It's because Manny Pacquiao is a better fighter right now in terms of where he is in his life, in his health, in his career than he was when against Floyd Mayweather. And Jeff Horn is a guy who's willing, who's going to come forward, who's going to try to engage in the fight, who's going to try to land a big right hand. Unlike Floyd Mayweather, that fight was never going to be a good-looking fight. When you ever see an exciting Floyd Mayweather fight, Horn's going to come forward, and Horn's going to go out on his shield, and doing so, in everything he's got in front of his hometown fans. He's going to be a risk-reward kind of guy, and stylistically, that's going to be pleasing for Pacquiao. Pacquiao hasn't had a TKO or knockout win since 2009, and this sets up perfectly for him. In spending time with Manny this week, what you find is he's got that hop in his step again. Remember, he had a bad shoulder when he fought Mayweather. He's having fun in training. He said to Freddie Roach a couple weeks ago, I feel like I got the pop back in my hands. And I think you're going to see that Saturday night. I think this is going to be a fun fight while it lasts. I think he will score big time against Horn. I predict somewhere around round 8 or round 9, he gets rid of Jeff Horn.
So for boxing itself, because Pacquiao is 38 years old and certainly on coming to the end of his career, would it be better for boxing if Horn were to pull off the upset here?
It would be stunning. I don't know if it would be better for boxing, because I still think that Pacquiao at this stage of his career, and the status that he has, can still deliver for another year to year and a half. And what I think would be great, Mike, is if Pacquiao looks great on Saturday night, and then some of this next wave, this next generation, I mentioned Terrence Crawford, they're all also guys at 147 pounds, if they stay the course, and then perhaps next winter or next spring, you have a fight against Crawford, now at 147 pounds, for the welterweight championship, where Pacquiao either takes one last at-bat and goes out, as one of the all-time greats with a victory against a young gun champion, or there's the passing of the torch moment, and a guy like Terrence Crawford becomes the welterweight champion of the world and is able to beat a guy like Pacquiao. Now, Horn can serve himself really, really well just by the way he fights, and I think you're going to see that out of him on Saturday night.
Mike, Joe Tessa is with us from Australia. The Battle of Brisbane tomorrow night. He's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. And right now, Joe, as I think every sports fan in the country is well aware, the specter of the upcoming battle, whatever it can be called, between McGregor and Mayweather is kind of hovering over everything. And there's been a lot of debate and discussion and hand-wringing over how it may impact some of the bigger boxing fights in particular. So what is your sense of that? What is your sense of what, if any, role that fight and the excitement about it is having on this, will have on other big boxing matches coming up in August, and then the big fight involving Triple G coming up in September?
Well, the fight with Canelo and Triple G is a spectacular fight. It's a world-class championship event. That is not what Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor is at all. To me, that is a mega event exhibition. That is a business deal. That is not a championship-level sporting event. It's the ultimate cash grab on both sides, and it just feeds into the great American curiosity. It's P.T. Barnum at its best. I respect it greatly as a spectacle. I respect it greatly as a business deal, but it's an example of how little Floyd Mayweather has ever cared for giving to the sport of boxing. He has always taken from the sport of boxing. And to me, that's fine if you're a businessman. That's not fine when Floyd constantly is seeking the adulation of being a legacy-defining champion. This is as big of a cash grab of just feeding on the great American curiosity of the circus as there ever has been. I don't think it greatly impacts, championship-level boxing events where you'll watch a prospect grow into a contender, become a champion, have a really fully forged career and take on the great challenges. This is not a challenge at all for Floyd Mayweather. In fact, I would go so far, and the more I think about that fight, there's a part of me that's almost stunned that the Nevada State Athletic Commission has licensed McGregor and has put forth and stamped that as a competitive fight. Now, we all know the business of it is the reason why, but, under no circumstances, if you ever had a fighter who has never had a professional bout, would the commission even allow for them to have that kind of a fight? They would be fighting in a 4-round fight. They wouldn't be fighting one of the great champions of all time.
This would be the time for Greeny to hit any button on the board that has anything to do with money, and that would be the complete reason why this is going on. So, Joe, you get to call a championship fight tomorrow, but we watched last night as you and Greeny were hosting Battle of the Network Stars, a bunch of champions there, led by Tom Arnold. I mean, so you guys
What's up with Tom?
Let me tell you.
Listen, I'm down here. How did he come across in that show?
Exactly the way he actually was.
Yes,
Joe.
Exactly the way you saw it. It is exactly as the way you think Tom Arnold would. Though he did come through in the tug of war.
He did. He turns out he was on the tug of war team in college, which who knew that was even a thing. But let me tell you something. Joe and I had such a good time doing that show. You have not lived until you have ordered dinner with Joe Tessitore, because Joe, if anyone who listens to Joe, and he's a magnificent play-by-play man, he did play-by-play of all of the events on Battle of the Network Stars, and what you have to love about him is that he called some of these races and some of these stuff. It sounds like he's doing, like the Olympic decathlon.
Right.
But then if you sit with Joe and he's ordering dinner, and he's exactly the same.
I always found it funny during the tapings there when I would turn to you and say, hey, Greeny, that was really good. This is great. And we're really getting excited watching, like, Ian Ziering and Shara Belafonte and, Kelly Hu. And we're sitting there. I mean, I would say, wasn't it just a matter of months ago I was calling the college football playoff, and now I'm really excited about the obstacle course, featuring Larry Wilcox and Ponch and John. It was just surreal.
I'm not gonna lie, Joe. I was a little worried about you because, of the vim and vigor you had in the college.
I was worried too.
Yeah.
It was great. We had a blast, though.
If you had to do one of the events, which would you choose? Which would your athletic ability give you the best chance in?
Oh, boy. I mean, my athletic ability now as a middle-aged Connecticut dad,
yes.
I think it would be humbling. I think it would all be quite humbling. I mean, listen, you can't help but look at that obstacle course and want to get after that thing. I mean, that is like the iconic, classic Battle of the Network Stars event. So I would probably pick the obstacle course, although everybody we saw that tried to tackle that obstacle course, with the exception of one huge upset that's coming up in one of the episodes. I think one of the next couple episodes, Greeny. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. I just recorded it last night. I just recorded the voice for it last night.
One of the things one of the last things I would ask, the celebrity coaches are DeMarcus Ware and Ronda Rousey. I believe there's 5 teams or 20 teams of 5, so that's 100 stars you have in this. Is there any one of them Ronda Rousey couldn't destroy? She looks about as fit as can be.
Oh, and not only is she in great shape and just like everything you expect, but she was amazing with some of these celebrities. The empathy she showed, her ability to coach some of them up. I mean, you got to understand, we had a lot of fun, but they were really being exposed at times. I mean, there were times that were not a great look for them. And the way she would talk to some of these celebs, I think you agree. I was so impressed with her as a coach, just the way she was able to relate to some of these folks.
She was tremendous, and she was very hands-on with them, and Joe and I were mostly far away from them, so I was making fun of them constantly, and that was sort of my role, and Rhonda was right there in there with them. But Joe was great fun to work with. We had a lot of fun. His kids came out and did the obstacle course. They could not have been nicer. But anyway, that was all for that, and that'll continue all summer long. But tomorrow night is the Battle of Brisbane, which hopefully will be a great night for the sport.
Right.
Obviously, there's a self-serving element of this for us at ESPN, but it wouldn't matter to me where this was. If this is a fight that was going to be on anywhere where people could access it as easily as they can I'd be rooting for it because I really would like to see this be the beginning of a new era for the sport, and Joe Tess will be there calling all the action, and we'll be watching. Enjoy it, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Good to be with you.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe Tessitore with us live again, and we are working out the Shell Pennzoil performance line. The guys did it here. So from Brisbane to Egypt to New York, which is where Stephen A. will be, to Houston, which is where Daryl Morey would be. Today, in total, our phone guests will take us on a 16,000-mile journey. For context, the circumference of the Earth is 25,000 miles. So we're covering basically 2/3 of planet Earth with our phone bill this morning.
Are we getting the miles for it on our credit card?
No, actually not. I don't know how that works exactly.
Yeah, I don't either.
He is so hilarious. Joe is one of those guys with those voices, right? I've always said, no, you don't know a more courageous person in the world than me, because with this voice, I decided, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice and try and become a broadcaster. Now, if I talked like Joe, I would be a superstar, because he's obviously got that. He's got the pipes.
Yeah,
he's got the velvety voice. He's got the delivery. But he does it. I mean, we're ordering dinner, and he's talking to the waiter, and he's running through the menu, and he sounds exactly like he's calling a fight. I'll have the steak. I'll have that with the potatoes. Can you do that with the au gratin? Can we put that on the outside? Ordering dinner with him is unintentionally hilarious.
I would like that. I would like to listen to that.
Very nice guy.
Greeny, you know how to win at business?
Tell me how.
Show up early for meetings. That way everybody who's only on time looks like slackers.
Well, I got a better way to win at business.
What's that?
Instant free nights at La Quinta Inns and Suites. You can show up with no advance reservation and redeem your La Quinta Returns loyalty points for a free night that same night just by using the La Quinta app.
I feel like I'd win at business more than you.
I'd cream you at business.
Impossible. I'm undefeated at business.
Go to LQ.com now and prepare to win at business. All right, I told you we are putting the Shell Pennzoil performance line to the test here this hour on Mike and Mike. We were just in Brisbane, Australia, with Joe Tessitore, and now we are going to Egypt, where USA Basketball's under-19 team is being coached by Kentucky coach John Calipari, who's good enough to jump in with us. I have no idea what time it is in Egypt right now. How are you, Coach? What time is it where you are?
It is 1:30. We just left the pyramids and I was on a camel, so I'm ready to go. It's on right now.
So before we get into any of this basketball stuff, I mean, I've never been there, and I want to go to the pyramids. Just give me a little bit on the pyramids and just how cool they are.
Well, they're not cool. It's really hot. But it's amazing when you see them that they built all this stuff, 2,000 years ago or more, and didn't have all the tools. How they lifted the stone and all the other stuff, it's just amazing. They tell the story, and you sit there and you're just shaking your head like, that's crazy. It's neat, though. It's great for the kids. Each of them got on a camel, and, so it was, we've had a couple friendlies with their scrimmages against a couple teams, France and Lithuania. So we had a day off and tried to take them out, let them see the country a little bit.
It's really nice. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Coach Cal is with us. Let's get the business we have to get out of the way so we can get to what I really wanted to talk to you about. You're aware that there was a report yesterday linking your name to the vacant president of basketball operations job with the New York Knicks. What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you my phone blew up at 4:45 here, and I had to tweet out, which is great about social media. You can cut stuff off when it's not true. But there's no one that, on my behalf, that called the Knicks. And there may be a college coach who has inquired about it. It wasn't me. I called my wife, and I said, was it you? But no, and I called my son. He hadn't called me back, so maybe my son had. No. I'm in Egypt, and it's funny that I get thrown into stuff even when I'm out of the country.
Is it fair to say at the end of each season or when the NBA gets in this position that you get contacted or your people maybe get contacted or back channels, whatever, each year about inquiring whether you want to go back to the NBA?
I don't think every year, but there have been times when it's happened. And, the thing I always say is, because of what happens for me every year, that I'm in that green room trying to help my kids get drafted. I like to have relationships with those owners and those GMs and presidents so that on draft night, I can pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, what are you thinking about my guy? We had 3 guys go in the lottery, and, all of them, our kids have, had a bunch of them in there, and that's good for us. So, but the reality of it is I'm coaching at Kentucky. Come on. In my mind, I got the best job in the country. It's been a great opportunity for young people to come in and better themselves and better their lives. It's an unbelievable stage to challenge them in so many ways, and I just can't see there's anything out there that I would want to leave for.
Mike and Coach Cal, he's in Egypt. Okay, so then let's get to what I really wanted to ask you about today. We had Mike Krzyzewski on a couple of weeks ago, and he talked really eloquently and passionately about his belief of where college basketball needs to go. And the 2 primary things he talked about were a baseball-like system where players could go right out of high school to the NBA if they choose, and if not, if they come to college, they have to make some sort of more significant commitment than they currently make, which is a 1-year deal. I think he talked about 2 years. I know you've talked a little bit about the possibility of 3, which is what baseball does. And he also talked about an idea that maybe basketball needs to some degree, break away a little bit from the rest of the NCAA and have a person in charge who is sort of I'm not sure what term it would be, a commissioner of sorts of big-time college basketball because of the particulars of that sport, versus some of the other non-revenue sports. And it was an interesting conversation, and it's something that I think is evolving. So I'd like to ask you, when you look down the road 10 years from now, maybe you're in it, maybe you're not, what do you think college basketball looks like 10 years from now from those standpoints?
Well, I don't know exactly, but what I'm hoping is we're worried about one thing and how we're preparing these young men for what they want to do and for life after basketball. Look, I don't think the one and done is broke. I say this, like my kids have all finished the term. We have guys on a lifetime scholarship. We've had 3 or 4 already start that path back where they're taking a class or 2. I mean, I think my kids have gone in the league, and every one of our lottery picks has gotten to a second contract. So to say they're not prepared, it becomes a gap year. It's a gap year for them. And my hope is if they want kids to go out of high school, I'm good with that if they take them in the NBA. But now I have a problem if they're looking to draft kids out of high school and put them in the D-League. And the reason is the NCAA about 10 years ago came up with an academic structure where they raised all these standards. And I was totally against it because I thought we needed to have more of a net, not less of a net. And I thought kids would get caught, and it would not be good for kids from different places. So my thing right now, you look back on that, the NCAA did right. Now, how many times have you ever heard me say the NCAA did right? They did right because we just had the highest graduation rate in men's basketball in the NCAA history for African-American kids. The highest. Now, if you're telling kids, hey, man, don't worry about going to school. We're going to put you in the D-League, and you're going to last a year or 2. Hopefully you make it. Probably about 5 or 8% of you will. The rest of you figure out life on your own. I mean, I don't like that. Now, if you're telling me you're going to pay a kid $20 million to go to the league and you're going to figure it out, that's fine. But I'm not for them using the D-League for high school kids. Not at all. And I will go on record so that if we start doing that and kids as 8th, 9th, and 10th graders choose, I'm not going to go to school. Why would I go to school? I'm going to go to the D-League and be professional. Really? You're going to have 2 years to make it. It'll be a revolving door. It's not minor league baseball where you got 3 single A, double A, triple A. If they want to draft kids out of high school and put them directly in the NBA and pay them or go to college for a couple of years, I'm good with that. But not if they're going to use the D-League so that they have the assets themselves. See, I don't see them as assets. I've got someone's child, and my job is to help prepare them and get them right. And I always say this, If anybody doesn't like this system, don't recruit those kids. Go recruit 4-year players. There's no problem with that. You have choices here. But I don't think it's broke. But if there's a better way of doing this, which is getting kids directly to the league, if they chose to do that, I'd be fine with it.
Talking with John Calipari, Kentucky head coach. He's in Egypt right now with the U19 team. Oh, by the way, John has produced 21 first-rounders who have made $457 million. So it's working out well for the guys that you're coaching. And I guess that would be the thing everybody needs to think about is it's either unintended consequences or you could see that the potential happening. So because of that, and I get it because I get that would happen. I guess the thought is if you think it's only going to happen to a few people, is it still worth trying to make a change? Or do you think, hey, if just like you said, if this isn't broke right now, don't fix it?
What we're talking 8 to 10 kids. Don't recruit those kids. Don't recruit them if you don't think you can deal with this. It's fine. But if you're telling me a kid can go directly to the NBA, be a 5th pick of the draft, and not a kid that does it. He goes undrafted. Now we're gonna put you in the D League for a couple of years, see if you can make it. Totally against it. Who's going to take care of these kids? Society. And I'll say it again. We just had the highest graduation rate for African American basketball players in the history of the NCAA. And I was against what the NCAA did, and I was wrong. They did right. You know what they did? They raised standards and made kids reach those standards. Now, there's an outlier who doesn't finish the term. My kids all finished the term. Every kid that left our program this year, we had 3 that graduated. The others that left, all 5, finished the term because they have a lifetime scholarship. I would say this. If you want to put high school kids in the D League, do what baseball does. You ready? Give them a signing bonus. Give them $1 million. Here's the other thing. Do what baseball does. Guarantee their education. So if they don't make it, you pay for their education. Now, I would say, okay, I'd be for that. It's about the kids. It's not about an asset. It's not about NBA. It's not about college. It's about these kids. How do we make the game better? How about how we make their lives better? How about we do that?
It's such a good topic, and it's one that we can certainly continue. Coach, we appreciate so much you taking the time while you're over there. Enjoy the trip, and we'll see you when you get back. Thanks so much. Have a great summer.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shades.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
I like that conversation with Calipari, too. You know, our conversation with Coach K a couple of weeks ago, these are the 2 guys who've benefited most, if you will, from the one and done. They get these players, they win championships with them, and then they send them off to the NBA where they make millions of dollars. All that seems to be working out very well. Now, you'll have people on the other side of it who will say that's even if they finish the term. And Coach K said, Calipari just said that all of his players did finish the term, and that's good, I guess, as opposed to not.
Right.
But it is still people going to college. And there's 2 things. Tell me if you agree with both these sentences. One, with no intention whatsoever of graduating.
None.
Now, that in and of itself isn't that terrible. When you're going to college, you don't have to go there with the intention of graduating, I guess, if you're genuinely interested in learning. And that brings us to the second one, which is people are going to college who really aren't going because they want to. They're going because they have to.
Right.
And that's the part of it where it feels like it stops making sense to me. Again, I'm one who says that it's not. It shouldn't be about what's best for the NBA, and it shouldn't be about what's best for the college coaches. It should be about what's best for each of the individuals making this decision on the one chance they get at life and a basketball career. So, in my opinion, to place any artificial restriction on these young men from letting them do whatever it is they feel is in their own best interest to do, I'm opposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, but to me, it involves so few people that it's really not enough to ruffle my feathers. quite honestly. It just doesn't involve enough people to where I'm going, do we change the whole system? Do we now let all these guys try and go from high school? Now, how many does it affect adversely as opposed to 1 year out of college where you have the ability to go back to college? If you don't like where you worked out or what you look like, you can still stay in college. You leave high school, unless they work out rules where you don't give up your college eligibility. As Coach Cal said, if you go to the D League out of the high school and you don't make it, they're going to pay for your college. So you have at least the opportunity to do that. Then, in my opinion, by giving the freedom and the right to somebody right out of high school to go to play in the NBA, you may ultimately be hurting more people by giving them the opportunity, and they're going to make the wrong choice. Now, as I said, you can just sit there and say, well, that's their choice to make. They have every right to make that choice. But then I think on the other side, is this so bad? Is this destroying people? Is this killing people? To do what we're doing now to maybe save from that side of it, where we're going to have maybe a whole lot of 18-year-olds that think they're going to play in the NBA by starting in the D League, and then they got nowhere to go and nothing to do. So is that worth the trade-off? I mean, those are a lot of the things you have to think about.
I'd like to put together a committee to look into answers to those questions. And, Mike, if you have time, I'd like you to chair that committee.
Absolutely, positively not.
All right, let's do over-unders. Mike and Mike, we're brought to you by La Quinta. Book at LQ.com and win at business. The staff has put together some over-unders for us. Here we go.
Over!
The over-under on the number of years that Chris Paul will play in Houston, 1.5. And you weren't here yesterday, but all the speculation, because he kept his bird rights and he kept the ability to become a free agent next year intact. It's sort of like buying himself a shot at this. 1 year with Harden, it works great. It doesn't. Boom, he's on anywhere he wants to go.
But, we'll have free agents next year, so I think a lot will depend on if they can get anybody to come down there as well. I'm going to say under.
I'm going to say under also. I think he's, to use the conversation we were just having, he's one and done in Houston.
Yeah.
Next, the over-under on the number of seasons Doc Rivers will remain as president and coach of the Clippers at 1.5.
Under.
You think next year's his last year?
I think, yes, it is going to be his last year. I think they're going to – this team already from the player side, Chris Paul gone, we're going to see what happens with Blake Griffin. They're just going to start to go in another direction.
I agree. It's 2 for 2 that we agree on. I will take the under. The over-under on the number of seasons that Coach Calipari will remain at Kentucky at 1.5.
That's a tougher one. I think Saban is not going back to the NFL at all. Saban is, 65, 64, did we determine?
He's older.
Calipari is 58. Calipari's had the stint in the NBA. Does he want to go back and try and be more successful? Because if he goes back, he'll probably be given the GM and or president job as well as a head coach and make a ton of money. Not that he's hurting for money now. I think it would be more of, does he want to go succeed in the NBA? I think at some point you wonder if you just say where I am is cool, but you dig the attention at times. I'm going to say over. I'm going to say he's going to stay.
We're 3 for 3. I agree on over. I don't know that I think he'll be there the rest of his career, but I think he'll be there 2 more years. Next, you might have seen the news that Bartolo Colon was designated for assignment by the Braves yesterday. He's 44 years old. Expected to clear waivers. Maybe the Mets will bring him back. Putting the over-under at 0.5 on how many more starts in the majors Bartolo Colon at the age of 44 will make.
So we're asking if he'll make one more start. I think he'll make one more start.
I agree, because I think the Mets are hoping, we keep agreeing on every one of these. The Mets are hopelessly out of it, or certainly they will be soon.
Right.
The fans loved him.
Good way to end it.
Just bring him back and let him pitch. What have you got to lose? Everybody so enjoyed it.
Pitch. Let him hit. Let him hit another home run.
Fair. All right, last one. We're at the over-under on the number of hot dogs that Golic could eat is set in 10 minutes. Is set at 19.5. Could you eat
with the hot dog,
over or under? Hot dog contest is this weekend.
19.5 in 10 minutes. I don't know. That 2 a minute? Be a tough call. I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I'm not a professional eater. I mean, I can eat a lot, but that's a lot of hot dogs in 10 minutes. I don't think I could do it. I think it would be under. I think I could be in the mid-teens.
You know what's disappointing? We agreed on every one of these. I agree. I do not think you would get there. And if you did, I think it would be just hideous.
Oh, the reversal would be horrible.
About 4 minutes later. Yeah.